Is epsilon naught a constant, or is it a property of a medium through which longitudinal waves exist? Let's see if we can answer this very important question. Epsilon naught is recognized today as a constant that tells us how well electric effects propagate through empty space. This constant has a brother, mu naught, that does the same for magnetic effects. Take the reciprocal of the square root of their product, and you get the speed of light or any other electromagnetic wave. As epsilon naught and mu naught are independent of the state of motion of the observer, so must the speed of light be independent. And thus relativity was born. Going back to Maxwell and his famous equations that started this all, you find that epsilon naught originates from the reciprocal of k, which denotes the elasticity of the ether, while mu naught originates from the density. But today we don't want to be reminded of the ether in any way, shape or form, and we call these two constants properties of the vacuum. In other words, properties of nothing, free floating properties. Then we have Nikola Tesla with his statements about longitudinal electric waves through the Earth. Waves that go through the center of the Earth to the opposite side where they reflect and return. My study of Tesla's work has revealed that these waves are outside of Maxwell's work, as they deal with density waves in what Tesla called the medium. If these density waves exist, then they should influence the values of epsilon naught and mu naught, and thus these would not be constant, and neither would be the speed of light. As Tesla's medium clings to matter, as he describes it, this would provide an alternative explanation for gravitational lensing. As this medium is denser near heavy objects, light travels slower in those regions, and thus light bends. Tesla wrote in his Colorado Springs notes that he discovered standing waves in the Earth as a result of lightning. But there is always lightning somewhere on Earth, so these waves should always be present. Therefore, if my interpretation of Tesla's work is correct, we should be able to detect small rhythmical variations in the value of epsilon naught. And, what's more, the frequency of these variations should relate to the dimensions of the Earth. To detect these variations, we measure the charge time of a small capacitor by counting the cycles of 16 MHz crystal clock. As we expect the variations to be very small, probably less than 1 in 10,000, we aim for a charge time of about 3.5 milliseconds, which would be about 56,000 clock cycles, which number fits in 16 bits. We use an Arduino Nano programmed in assembly language, so we have full and exact control over the CPU and its peripherals. The Arduino has 3 timers. We use one to space the measurements 4.992 milliseconds apart. We use a 16-bit timer and its input capture unit to measure the charge time, and we use an external voltage comparator to signal that the capacitor has reached 90% charge. The first version of the EDD used an LCD display as a sort of oscilloscope. This did not produce convincing results. The second version of the EDD used a TFT display with a much better resolution. This still did not produce convincing results. In the third version of the EDD, we took out the display and had the EDD send its measurement data to a desktop computer through an USB connection. This came with several issues that were eventually solved by using a second Arduino to relay the data to the computer. We collected several hours of data and ran it through an FFT to check for any frequency pattern. As the signal was very weak, we did not immediately find what we were looking for. Next, I calculated a moving average of 40 samples and subtracted that from the actual data. 40 samples represent an interval of 199.68 milliseconds. This new data was again used in an FFT with this result. We can now clearly see a 7.5 Hz frequency present in this signal. We were hoping to see 11.77 Hz, the frequency Tesla mentions and the period of which, 85 milliseconds, we have been able to verify. Yet, 7.5 Hz is equally relevant as this period equals the circumference of the Earth divided by the speed of light. So what are the implications? Does this invalidate special relativity? Not necessarily, but it does complicate things a bit. On the other hand, things were a bit complicated already, so it doesn't change much. Does it invalidate general relativity? Also, not necessarily, but it does provide simpler explanations than the concept of curvature of space, which sounds to me a bit dodgy. The most important implication, however, is that Tesla's method of sending power and messages through the Earth may actually work. You don't believe me? Please verify my claims. Pull out the pink calculators, comb your unibrow. I'm not here to push Tesla's theories. I just want to find the truth. There's a link to a package of information and source code in the description. If you need anything more, such as a pre-programmed Arduino or a ready-built PCB, please become a Patreon first.